People who come to know and believe in the living Christ seem to be entering into that belief through a different door than they did in the past. They seem to actually process thought differently, and it makes me wonder how this will affect corporate worship. For example, most of history has operated on the oral tradition where culture and news and wisdom and ideas were transferred by word of mouth. If a trusted and wise teacher said it, it was taken as fact, and this is the era into which the Christian church was born. In this age, hearing was believing. But when Gutenberg turned a wine press into a printing press and people began to read, the teacher was removed from the transfer of knowledge and truth. The world shifted from an oral tradition to a print tradition, and a shift occurred in how people knew and believed things. Now, reading was believing. Print enabled the ideas of the Protestant Reformation to spread quickly, but unfortunately, the ensuing period of extreme rationalism, known as the Enlightenment, deeply affected Christian worship, which came to resemble a classroom more than it did a gathering or a meal. In the 20th century, the print tradition gave way to a multimedia age. People grew accustomed to receiving pictures with their information. And again, it changed how people knew and believed things. It was no longer enough to hear or read about an event. Now, seeing was believing. Church services, too, began to show as well as tell the story of God, complete with props and scenery. We are in the midst of another monumental shift. Bob Weber articulated well the changes that postmodernism is having on how people know and believe. He said that science, with our expanding universe, now demands that people entertain at least a guarded acceptance of mystery. And since the internet has caused people to think far more globally, they see the world as interconnected and interactive, actually expanding people's definition and experience of community. And he noted that communication has become much more symbolic, less verbal. Just look at our text messages. The postmodern mind actually processes differently. For them, belonging is believing. In other words, knowledge and belief are most often processed through a person's community. Now, the postmodern tendency towards relativism is worrisome, but on the other hand, there are some very Christian traits about this postmodern culture. For example, while the modern church gives 3 points to understanding the supernatural, postmodern people seem very comfortable embracing mystery and paradox, which are at the very heart of Christianity. And while the modern church has grown increasingly individualistic, postmodern people value community, which more closely resembles the early church. And finally, while the centerpiece of the modern church service is the sermon, postmodern worshipers want to do the work of worship rather than watch it or listen to it. We must adapt our worship services if we want to nurture and disciple the current and coming generations. First, we must begin to embrace the mysteries and paradoxes that are inherent to Christianity and stop preaching Christ by the numbers. Second, we must facilitate an authentic community in our churches and design corporate worship that is truly corporate, treating people like worshipers rather than a glorified audience. Third, our services must incorporate more symbolic forms of communication and adoration. Many of these things were thrown out in the name of Reformation, and I think that we lost too much. Where is worship going? If the church does not adjust, then neither worship nor evangelism will be an issue. People will find somewhere else to belong, somewhere they don't suck the mystery out of life and where they communicate in a familiar style. We, the church, must begin to operate as an authentic community, or we will become irrelevant.